Hi, I'm Dan, the Naturopath. How did I lose over 66 pounds or 30 kilos without exercise? Find out next. Before we get started, I have a question for you. What was the craziest diet you've ever tried? Let me know in the comments below. So today I'm going to tell you the story of how I transformed my health and lost over 66 pounds or 30 kilos without exercising. I know you're probably dying to find out how this happened, but it does go back, and I have to go back and tell the story for more clarity. I was always overweight, well, at least most of my life. I grew up, I was a chubby kid. I was always either chubby or overweight, and at some point in my life, straight up obese. I loved food. I still love food, and I consider myself to be a food addict. Being a food addict means constantly thinking about food, craving food, wanting food, and eating huge quantities of food too. So I really didn't feel that I had any control over what I was eating, how I was eating. I just loved eating, and it was my go-to. If I was sad, I'd eat. If I was upset, I'd eat. If I was happy, let's celebrate, Anything is eating. Our whole culture revolves around eating. Every little thing you'll notice, anything that we do, any kind of occasion or celebration, obviously, or even, when we're lamenting something, we're sad, we're grieving, everything is connected to food. Every holiday is connected to different kinds of foods. Every social gathering, every interaction always has to include food, otherwise it barely counts, right? I found myself spinning out of control in terms of what I eat and a lack of control over my health. I was gaining weight on and off. Back when the transformation happened was a breaking point because I had reached over 110 kilos. Don't remember how much that comes out in pounds. I'll write it up here. I was officially obese, and I didn't like that at all, but I grew to accept it as, an inevitability of life. And the way I am, I considered myself to be a fat person. I guess in my mind, I will always be, in a way, a fat person. But there was a point where I just snapped. My relationship with food was obviously twisted, not to say broken. I decided to tackle it the way that I knew how. And that way was by studying the heck out of it. And that's what I decided to do. I, at that time, was suffering from not just obesity, but a non-diagnosed non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea. I was sleeping with a CPAP machine, which is, those of you who have had the misfortune of experiencing it themselves, is very unpleasant. It just makes you feel like, you're an unhealthy person, which I was. I was an unhealthy person, although I was vegan. I was a fat vegan. I was eating junk food and cakes and candies and all the variety of vegan alternatives available, and there's new products coming out to the market every day. It's a huge market, and companies or manufacturers are making a lot of money there. So obviously, they're developing more and more products, but that doesn't mean that they're good for us. The vast majority of those products are highly processed, packed with fat, packed with sugar, packed with all sorts of ingredients that you wouldn't necessarily want to put into your body. I dove into studying nutrition, and I decided to use that information to change what I was doing and to get healthy. And the objective was different this time because every time I was doing this, I was thinking about, just losing weight, which is what everyone thinks. I want to lose a quick few pounds and look better and feel better about myself. But no, this time I said, this is going to be different. I'm not going to do it that traditional way, the way I've always done it, because that's proven to fail. So I want to do it better. I want to do a better job. I want to do it thoroughly. And this time, I'm not going to look at the objective as being skinnier. I'm going to set myself a goal of being healthy. And I studied, and I found out that what was happening with all the processed junky food that I was eating is that it was causing a lot of dopamine activation. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter in our brain, and it's responsible for motivation and craving and wanting. that system is activated every time we do something pleasurable. Also, it's very much associated with food, and it's the way that we remember particular foods. It's the way that we crave specific foods and want them and get addicted to them. And yes, it is very highly tied to addiction and addictive behavior. And I understood at that point that there was a strong element of addiction in my behavior, and that I was overstimulating my nervous system by constantly eating these highly concentrated, highly processed foods that were hitting my reward center hard and fast on a consistent basis. So what I had to do is I had to stop it. I had to pull myself out of that cycle, basically let my nervous system down-regulate my dopamine response, which is what happened as I switched over. And it was gradual with me because I was studying about it. But as I switched over to whole plant foods and cut out the processed junk and cut out all the cakes and all the unhealthy things that I was eating, I discovered that as I stopped eating those things, I also stopped craving them to a great extent. I mean, it's not that I dislike having cakes or dislike having sweets nowadays, but if I do have anything of that sort, it would be something that is not your average cake. It won't be average cake, it would be a much healthier one. I would still enjoy it. It would still trigger and activate me to some extent, and I have to be careful with that because when I do start eating those things, even though I'll have a cake that doesn't contain oil and is much healthier than the average cake, if I do make it and I make it myself with whole flours and every possible healthy ingredient and remove anything that I can that is unhealthy, it'll still be cake and it'll still trigger me, it'll still activate me. So I need to be really careful with that because I can get carried away and easily put on 10 pounds without even noticing. And that actually has happened to me. And then I needed to sort of like step back and say, okay, I need to take it down a few notches and stay away from cakes, be aware of what I'm doing, because it's very easy for me as someone who is susceptible to these things to get carried away and just go down that path. So even though I'm eating only healthy foods, I still need to be nutritionally aware of what's going on and be cognizant of what I'm putting into my body. So as I was studying, I discovered that nutrition is a much more powerful tool than I could ever imagine. It can treat heart patients who are on their deathbed. It can vastly improve the health outcomes of diabetic. Obviously, weight loss, there's been extensive research on weight loss using different kinds of dietary regimes, and using a whole food plant-based low-fat diet has been proven to be the most effective, healthy way to lose weight without limiting portions, meaning without weighing and measuring and telling people not to eat more than a certain amount. It is so powerful. And I just started, the weight just started melting away. And mind you, I wasn't exercising when this happened. I was very, I wouldn't say I wasn't physically active at all, but very minimally so. I was walking around a little bit. I had dogs and I was walking them. That's pretty much it. I wasn't exercising. There was no exercise regime for me. There was no, I didn't work out per se. And I was losing the weight. And it was all because I changed my diet. So what was I doing? What was happening here? What happened was I switched from eating a lot of processed foods and fatty foods to eating whole plant foods and consuming a low-fat vegan diet. And that low-fat was also a process. That low-fat is significant because if you're not aware of the amount of fat that you're consuming, fat is twice as calorically dense as protein and carbohydrate. So it has 9 calories per gram as opposed to 4 calories per gram in carbohydrates and in proteins, which means it contains a lot more calories in smaller volumes of food. So it's very easy to overeat it, and the body doesn't treat it the same way. I will get into that in future videos, I promise, but a calorie from fat does not equal, and I cannot repeat this enough, it does not equal a calorie from protein or carbohydrate, because the body does not treat them the same way under normal circumstances. Of course, there are extreme conditions which we're not going to get into right now. So there was about a year where I was tweaking and changing my diet, and I had to give up certain things that I was used to eating. One of the things that was hard for me and was, I think, very significant as a vegan was tahini. Such a healthy ingredient. Everybody loves tahini. Why not? It's delicious, but it's a nut butter. Not that it's unhealthy, but it's extremely fatty. It's basically ground up sesame seeds, and it's very, very high in fat. And then when you keep adding it to the food that you're eating, and you're making this huge salad and you think, oh my God, this is so healthy. I'm eating this huge salad, I'm putting healthy tahini sauce on it, but you've added half a cup of tahini to it and you're pouring it all over your salad, then you just added a whole bunch of fat to it and you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're making it much harder for your body to lose that weight. That was hard for me to do. That was hard for me to give up, but I did that and the weight kept coming off. And I ended up losing over 30 kilos or so 66 pounds in that single year. I have managed to keep it off for over 4.5 years now. And you need to change your outlook on food. And I think that's what I've done here, is I've changed my relationship with food. Of course, none of that is set in stone. I could just easily just slip back into bad habits, so I still need to be aware. I do consider myself to be a food addict, so I need to be careful. But that being said, it's much easier to keep your weight healthy and normal when you're eating the right foods, because the right foods are healthy, they're packed with nutrients, they're very nutritionally dense, they're calorically dilute, and they have a lot of fiber in them, and they're the healthiest foods on the planet. So what are those healthiest foods? Well, you keep them unprocessed first. You want to try and stay away from things that are ground up, so flours. I'm not saying avoid them altogether, but keep them to a minimum. You want to eat your foods whole. That's why it's called whole food plant-based, not just looking at whole foods, but the actually unprocessed, the actual whole grain, the actual whole legume, and so on. So what you want to do is you want to eat what I call the 4 pillars. So those are fruits, vegetables, obviously, whole grains, that's number 3, whole grains, and legumes, that's 4. Now legumes, to make sure that we're on the same page, are beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, all those sorts of plants that grow in a pod. They are extremely nutritious, they're high in protein, they have been shown to be linked with longevity. So people who consume legumes every day live longer. That's also true, by the way, for certain types of whole grains, and obviously people include vegetables and fruit in their diet, but that's pretty obvious. I mean, everyone knows that fruit and veggies are healthy, but they just find it hard to consume them. One other thing that you need to remember here is to include root vegetables, okay? So the potato, the sweet potato, things like corn also, squashes, these are all healthy foods. Those are actually called starches. We'll get into that in a separate video. All of those contribute to weight loss. So if you're eating different types of fruits, starchy and non-starchy vegetables, if you're eating those fruits, whole grains, and I don't mean whole grain bread, I mean actual whole grains. So eat rice, eat quinoa, eat barley, and so on. And if you're eating those legumes, the beans, the peas, the lentils, the chickpeas, the soybean too, all of those will just make your body lean and healthy. So that's the secret. It's as simple as that. I'm just giving away the secret. So go ahead, eat the 4 pillars, use those 4 pillars to build your health. There's nothing to it. And I just want to say a few words about exercise. I am saying this very clearly. I did not exercise while I lost the weight. I did not need to exercise in order to lose that weight. So you can't use exercise as an excuse. You can't say, ooh, you know, it's because you're not exercising that you're not losing weight. It's just not true. You can lose weight. You can lose all the weight you want without exercising. However, I don't want it to go on record that Dan said that exercise is not good or advised, because it is. It's healthy, it's good, and I recommend that everyone adopt an exercise regime and stick to it if they can. I did start to exercise about a couple of years ago, and I've been exercising regularly, and I'm very happy that I'm doing that. It's very good, it's healthy, I feel good, but I feel that to some extent it was the weight loss and the health transformation that I underwent that allowed me to exercise in the first place. Meaning, when you're big and heavy and bulky and you're not feeling good in your body, you won't necessarily have, you might have, but you won't necessarily have the motivation to work out. But once you lose that weight, you become lighter, more energetic. And then you have the energy and the ability and the ease of movement within your body to start exercising. So I do recommend that every person adopt the kind of exercise that you like, want, feel comfortable with. Please do. It's very good for you. It's very healthy. I recommend it. But you do not need to cling to the notion that exercise is key in losing weight. It can help, but it's not a must in order to lose weight. So if you're worried about that, don't be. You can start out by changing your diet, go through the process, lose the weight, and when you're feeling up for it, then you can think about adopting an exercise regimen. So that pretty much wraps it up. We are looking at a lot more interesting videos, so stay tuned. Remember that the bottom line here, what I'm saying is, the nutrition has tremendous power to heal you, to transform you, make you feel the best you've ever felt, to give you the longest, healthiest life that you can achieve. And it's all up to you, and you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Anyone can do it. I'm here to help you make that change and see it through and make sure that it happens. So remember, eat whole plant foods, and you only stand to lose the weight, diabetes, the obesity, the heart disease. See you next time.